Now, if the NDIS wants to micromanage that level of detail, we're in for bigger trouble than we realise.
I have seen firsthand. Sorry. I get a little bit, well, I wasn't expecting to get this emotional.
All right, guys, welcome to the NDIS Untold podcast. Wayne, it's great to have you here, and you,
Thanks for having us
as well, Frank.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. You're welcome, mate. Look, guys, can we just start off? You guys can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Thing Adventures and why you guys created that.
Yeah,
did that with you.
It all started with a bit of an accident. Really,
It did start.
you can start with that.
As an accident? It started as an accident. I'm in it because Wayne asked me to be a part of it. So
Fair enough. Look, in short, Thing as a brand, Thing, a lot of people ask us about that. That was a company that I started and founded in 2014 in Hong Kong. We're a media production company, and we've done a whole lot of broadcast programs across Asia. So that's a bit of history. During COVID, we moved back to Australia, my wife and I, and Frank and his wife, Jules, they're long-term friends of ours, and another friend, Darren, actually, just a few guys that I connect with when I'm in Brisbane. But Frank and I were at a four-wheel drive show up at the Redcliffe showgrounds, and we went up to... Now, I'm usually the guy that's doing the crazy stuff. There was we're looking at all these beautiful caravans, four-wheel drives, and there was a scooter display, electric scooters, and one of them that they had on display had these chunky wheels, and it was super robust off-road scooter. And I just went, none of this was true. I went up to the lady that was at the stand and I said, my mate and I are YouTubers and we'd like to ride that scooter from Perth to Brisbane. Do you reckon it'll handle it? And her eyes lit up, didn't they?
She did.
And she said, well, if you did that, there might be a sponsorship in it for you. And we're like, okay.
Why not?
Yeah. So Frank's going along with the whole thing. And we went back the next day and we took our wives back, actually, just to have a look at the caravans. We went to the store and she said, I've spoken to the owner of the company. Definitely sponsorship for scooters if you want to ride from Perth to Brisbane. We'll give you everything you need. And no, we just thought, let's do this. This would be great. We had no idea what to do. No name, no nothing at that point. And we just kept going with it with this company, set the whole thing up. We met with the Mater Foundation in the city centre and said, hey, we want to raise funds for Crohn's disease, autism, all sorts of things that we're passionate about. And we started going down that path, and then COVID hit. And then WA shut the borders, and then New South Wales and Queensland shut their borders, and then all of the momentum we had came to a quick stop. And so we just got together and decided, look, let's do this company no matter what, and let's come up with a name. Because of my association with Thing Group, we thought, let's call it Thing Adventures, and then let's see where to go. And because of our connection with disabilities, and my son, who's now a young adult, has autism and severe intellectual disability, we just figured there's a lot of things that people like that don't have access to. Let's make it a reality. So fast forward to today. We're a startup company with 2 fully equipped four-wheel drives that can take people with disabilities to remote locations across Queensland.
Yeah.
And that was sort of how we got started, and that's where we are today. There's a whole lot of stories in between all that.
Of course. Yeah, no, that's really cool, because just to add some insight, we joined you guys on a trip, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and that was sensational. Like, it was so cool, to explore the beach and go and have a look at the accommodations that you guys rent, with meals included and stuff. It was such a great experience. I came back and I told the guys, at the office, including John, hey, we need to tap into your services because it's very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Glad you enjoyed it.
It was great. I
We had fun.
believe everyone else enjoyed it too, because I think that was the conversation on LinkedIn for the next week.
It was.
So
It was.
cool. All right. So Wayne and Frank, do you want to share a little bit now, Thing Adventure, and how does that relate to the NDIS sector?
I think it started as a conversation. I do a little bit of support work for Wayne's son.
Mm-hmm.
And I had dropped him off one day. Wayne was in Hong Kong. So I rang Wayne and I said, we've got Thing Adventures. We're not really doing anything. We're having a lot of fun, but we're really not. And we're registered, we're a company, but we're not doing anything. Where is our market? And we talked about why can't we make what we do accessible to people with disabilities who may not have that opportunity? So from there, I rang or contacted Riley's
support
coordinator, just flagged the idea. She said, great idea. I think you should go for it, and you should consider attending the Disabilities Expo in...
the DAC, Disability Connections Expo.
Yes.
2023.
Yeah.
March.
So this was in, I think I spoke to her late December, early January, then had a chat to Wayne. Wayne Googled it all. This was in March, or it may have even been closer to March. So we didn't have a lot of lead-in time. So we thought, let's go for it. We thought, go big or go home. Yeah. So the normal booth is a 3x3 metre. They had a 9x9, so we got a 9x9 metre, didn't have a clue what we were doing, so it was easy just to park a four-wheel drive in the middle of it.
Oh, that was you guys.
I remember that.
But last year,
Yeah, I remember that.
Chris and I were talking. So because we've always been wanting to do similar sort of programs for participants. To be fair, we were talking about Chris taking his Hilux and parking in the expo, and you guys actually did it.
Yeah.
We did.
What was
we didn't
hilarious?
know what else to do.
What was hilarious was when Mike Clark, and Mike's an amazing support for us, and even through some of our challenges, he's been amazing. Yeah. So Mike Clark from the expo. He just said, look, guys, love what you do. I've got a 9x9. And we're just sort of, we were in a coffee shop at Fox Coffee up on the north side. And I remember looking around this cafe going, 9x9's massive. and so on a phone call with Mike, we said, yeah, we'll do it, because that's all he had left that would fit a four-wheel drive in it. And turned out that we were in one of the largest spaces at the expo, had no clue. Yeah. And gee, we had fun. Full disclosure, so Frank's support work with my son Riley, that was a relationship established way before Thing Adventures, and Thing Adventures has no, we're very, very clear about boundaries there. I just want to make sure on the record that we have, so that's a completely separate arrangement. So if anyone was wondering, my son Riley doesn't do any work or whatever through Thing Adventures. So, so it's just, so it's been an amazing journey. I remember going back to that time wondering, how can we do something? We had have you ever read John Maxwell?
Yep.
And John Maxwell, he says it's more important to get the right people on the bus before you know where the bus is going.
Yes.
And that was our business philosophy. It's like, well, we know, we've got the right people on the bus, then let's figure out where we're going. And so that was what we did. We started to gather people around us. We knew the connections. I knew that Frank and I, and at the time, another friend, Darren, incredible camaraderie and just the ability to work together. And we just decided, let's do this. But we had no idea where we were going. And then we started to see the need. And it was the need that really paved the way for us to get involved in the NDIS space. Yeah. And so that began in earnest in March 2023 at the Disability Connections Expo.
Sorry, John, before you get to your question, I just want to say it is very unique what you guys do. There's so many SIL providers and CAS providers and stuff out there, but what is it, the services that you guys offer is just, it's very unique, it's very rare. Yeah. And, you touched on earlier as well, Frank, with regards to accessibility. Yes, there are tours and stuff out there, but nothing is designed or catered for anyone with a disability.
Correct.
So, no, awesome.
We're going to go back to the conversations that we spoke about earlier. So, there's been a lot of public outcry, a lot of attention with regards to, I guess, any form of NDI support that remotely relates to a holiday or lifestyle category, right? And I guess, the NDIS is starting to scrutinize these two categories quite in depth. And, and a lot of people don't see, I guess, the sort of benefits of having activities like this, right? What are the sort of therapeutic effectiveness, or, if that's what you call it, on a person with disability, right? So can you just touch a little bit more about, in terms of the outcomes of your programs and your activities, what sort of outcomes have been achieved for participants in terms of whether is it mental health recovery, whether is it, sort of break for their caregivers. Can you just share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would want to create a distinction between lifestyle and participation in community and recreation. Participation in your local community and with other people and recreational activities are 100% not excluded by the NDIS. Those are things that we are trying to encourage people to do.
Yeah.
For somebody with autism, and I've got first-hand experience with this, their nature is to lock themselves up in an enclosed space and just become hermits, really.
Yeah.
And so in many people's plans right across Australia, one of the goals is that they need to get outside and participate actively in their community and in activities. And so lifestyle, it is not a bad thing. But when you an activity, I think, is if it gets someone out of their room, out of their house and involved in community, I think it's a great thing. And that is fully supported by the NDIS. However, there is a big distinction between that and a holiday. And I think we did talk about that earlier. I think holidays should rightly be in their own category as a personal expense. And what was happening were people in the program were saying, well, there's a registered provider who's taking people on respite and STA, short-term accommodation. I can save money by doing that myself without 24/7 care. And they were just booking themselves their own, rooms and tickets and flights and passports and visas and whatnot. And very quickly, you cannot differentiate between that and a holiday. That is not respite care. That's just using the NDIS for your own benefit. So I think clearing up some of the definitions is really important in that space first, and understanding the purpose behind short-term accommodation and respite care, which is still, as of today's recording, is still 100% an NDIS necessity, especially as it relates to giving caregivers a break on a frequent basis, especially from high-intensity supports and needs of their participants. And for participants that need to get into new environments, if you read the NDIS guidelines, it does say that there's an allowance for learning new skills, learning new things. And so that short-term accommodation should involve those things, but you have to have somebody there with you.
I think you're right. Drawing that definitions is what's missing at the moment. I know that NDIS obviously has released that list of supports of what's included and what's not included.
Yes.
And some of the definitions are very vague, right? So obviously they've talked about what sort of services are actually included, what supports aren't, but they aren't actually spelling it out. I remember you were talking to me about the wilderness therapy, and how I thought it was really interesting that, people are now avoiding taking participants out into the into nature, just into nature in general, because they fear that, they might not be able to claim for it because of the fact that, now it's been excluded, part of the exclusion of funding for those category of supports. And obviously when you were sharing a little bit more about that, in terms of definitions and stuff like that, would you like to just share with our audience on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I read the list of do not supports and saw that, there was a... Now, I agree with it being on the do not support list, wilderness therapy. I need to say that right up front. But there was this instant sigh of oh my gosh, because there was no hyperlink to there that said define wilderness therapy. Because when you say if you say you're going into the wild, well, describe the wild.
Yeah.
Because the wild would be anything that's outside of the four walls of this room.
Yep.
And so does that mean I can't take a participant for a walk to the beach, to the botanical gardens, on a Sea-Link ferry, on one of the Brisbane River cruises?
Yep.
Can I take them for a walk in the park, or any of the simple things that caregivers do day to day with their participants to get them out of their homes? And so it would be absurd to think that wilderness therapy means a blockage to, the delisting of wilderness therapy would mean a complete denial of any kind of outdoor activity. That would be just a complete overreaction to that. So you have to look into what is wilderness therapy. And sadly, the NDIS didn't give any definitions. They didn't give any explanations. So they've left it to providers like ourselves.
Yeah.
And I need to specify, we are a certified, registered NDIS provider. We were audited on the basis of being an outdoor activities provider. So if the NDIS had any issue with that, and that audit only came through, our certification was granted in July of this year.
Yeah.
So this is very recent. And we were very explicit about what we do. So the fact that we were given that clearance tells us that, hang on a moment, we've got to dig a little deeper. So it was up to a provider like us to go in and find out what is wilderness therapy. And in short, wilderness therapy is a highly controversial, restrictive practice that is aimed at bringing about behavioural modifications in its participants. And in essence, if you've ever seen Survivor on TV, where you go and dump a few people on a lonely island and come and pick them up 2 weeks later, that's wilderness therapy.
Yep.
And some people say, falsely, that it can cure things. And it would basically mean when the human struggles at the very depth of just surviving and their existence, that suddenly things disappear. Now, there may be some merit to that based on other research that says being outdoors is good for you, but nature was never meant to break you. It's meant to heal you.
Heal you.
And
Correct.
wilderness therapy is about breaking people down to the point that they're in tears, to the point that they're starving, no food, denied water, really extreme practices that should rightly be banned. So there's no way taxpayer money should be going towards wilderness therapy. You look into that and say, okay, that's why it's in there, because it shouldn't be supported. But then conversely, we need to understand what isn't banned, though, is going outside and being in the outdoors and giving participants the dignity to just enjoy nature and have a good service provider, giving them a good quality of service.
Do you find that because, at the moment, there's so much changes happening in the NDIS space, right? Obviously, we're just talking about definitions and things like that. But there's a fair bit of, uncertainty. So as a provider, how do you guys navigate around that, right? Because we have a lot of providers, I've met quite a few at events, and I spoke to them, and they're all very concerned about changes, about what's happening. So how do you guys actually navigate through that?
The same as everyone else. The way the NDIS is right now, I wish we all had a voice at the very top end of it to speak into it. The way we navigate it is we understand the only thing you can absolutely base as fact is what's written in black and white. And so you have to constantly keep coming back to what's written in NDIS guidelines, what's written in the pricing guide, the latest one. And they keep updating those frequently. I think the latest one's 1.3 issued on October the 6th or whatever. So you've got to keep going back to what's written in black and white. And occasionally, though, we've spoken as well to a lot of support coordinators and plan managers that will call the NDIS, speak to somebody, get an answer that's clearly wrong, hang up, ring back again, speak to somebody else, and get a completely different answer.
Yes.
Now, the issue there is not on the providers, the participants, the caregivers, the support coordinators or the plan managers. The issue there is with the NDIS itself. And thankfully, the 12-month buffer, in my opinion, is not for us. It's for them to organise, to get their stuff together, because as a rollout, I would say most companies, even like yourselves, you wouldn't roll out a product like this without the back-end support where everybody is saying the same thing. And the truth is everybody's saying something different. So we're just going full steam ahead because we know we have our accreditation. We know what we're here to do. We know that we provide value for money. I think any support coordinator, plan manager, service provider should be able to say these things.
Yep.
If it lines up with the planning guidelines, if it lines up with what our objects are, if it lines up with what our certifications are for, why would we stop giving participants the care that they need?
100%.
So we've got to fight for that. I think that it just takes support coordinators and service providers.
Yeah.
You've got to have a fight.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I noticed about you both, the fighting spirit. But, you guys do it with a bit of a flair too. You guys joke about it, which is great, If you put on a fight and, everyone's always very, fierce about it, it gets to an unhappy ending, right? So I like your approach to matters. It's always refreshing to see that anyway. But Frank, so I just want to ask you, so in terms of the programs that you guys have, how do you personalize it to participants? How do you actually make sure that it meets the needs of participants?
I have been on every respite that we have provided, and each one has been different, and no two respites are the same, and no two participants are the same. So every respite is tailored to the individual. So, the whole onboarding process is geared to creating a custom experience for each individual. So they fill out an online application, which gives us a whole lot of information. We then meet with them from that in person, because anyone can put anything on an application form, but then we meet them personally. We get an understanding, a feel. We try and build a relationship through that. Through that process, and then from there, Wayne does all the fun stuff like creating a
getting the participant consent forms, tailored safety plans, risk assessments,
all that fun stuff,
all of the stuff. So we work in tandem on that, but Frank does the front line.
Yeah, because one thing I wanted to ask, it being like a outdoor adventure, particularly with 4-wheel driving, there's obviously inherent risks that's involved, right, in terms of participant and staff safety. So how do you guys actually navigate that?
We have so many permits. We have permits to the yin yang. Can we say yin yang? But
I think we could. We don't get beeped out for saying yin yang, do we?
Permits, governance, documentation.
I would actually say, I think in the NDIS eyes, because we're not we're a certification audit, not a what's the other one? Verification.
Yeah.
So that means we're in the higher support level category. But as far as insurance and that goes, we're not a high risk entity or company. We don't do on-water fishing, for example. We do land-based fishing. If any of our participants do anything, it's your 2 feet are planted on sand or earth. They're not. I think we've ruled that out as something we don't want to do.
Yeah.
4-wheel driving is essentially the same as just driving a car anywhere else, except that our drivers have to have a lot more training on how to handle sand conditions, things like that.
Yeah.
So Frank was right. Accreditation and certifications are everything. So we have an operator accreditation with Transport and Main Roads. All of our drivers are driver authorised, for commercial vehicles.
Yeah.
We have commercial vehicle registrations. So we've gone and done all of those things to ensure that safety is at the absolute top of our agenda when it comes to dealing with people with disabilities or tourists for that matter.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how we deal. But we don't. We're not just because we're an outdoor company. That doesn't mean we're going hang gliding or paragliding or bungee jumping. No, we're not. Not that at all.
Yeah.
It's really just about embracing the outdoors and nature, because people with disabilities generally don't have the energy, the time, or the capacity to get themselves there. So we're just stepping in as we've often said this, that we are an access company. We're just there about providing access to the beauty of the outdoors. But I don't think there's anything inherently high risk about nature or the outdoors.
Yeah.
But as a case in point, though, Frank had to set all the vehicles up that we have. So we've got snake bite kits and first aid kits. So we've covered every risk that's been assessed, but we've never had to use any.
That's awesome.
Nothing's high risk.
Yeah, because I remember, you guys obviously talk about it's, how we have that saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. And I like how you guys are flipping that around. It's, it's better to ask for permission than it is to ask for forgiveness.
Absolutely.
I do find that a lot of the times providers tend to do it the other way, right? And they wait for things to happen before they do anything about it, which is reactive. By the time safety is compromised and it's no longer, I guess, in the participants' best interest. So definitely what you guys are doing is more appropriate, I would feel, based on the type of activities you're doing. But in saying that, though, obviously you mentioned quite a few different activities like paragliding, possibly even water fishing and things like that. But you guys actually try the more risky route here and sort of offer that at some point? No,
I don't. There's plenty of companies in Queensland that can do that already, and they've already paid their insurance bills. So we're happy to let them take the liability for that.
I agree.
So,
and I'm too old.
So, Frank, what are some of the activities that you guys offer?
Our area of expertise, I guess, is Minjerribah, North Stradbroke Island at the moment. So it starts from the very beginning. Once we pick them up, it's a 30 to 40-minute drive to the vehicle ferry. It's a 45-minute ferry ride across the bay, which is an adventure in itself. Once we get over to the island, we make our way to the accommodation, and we're very specific with the accommodation that we source. There are a number of properties that we can get access to that are on the waterfront, so they're backyard, and then you're straight on the water. So some of them, there was one particular participant, all she wanted to do was fishing. Fishing was her therapy. So she basically, from early in the morning till late in the afternoon, she sat in a chair in the backyard and just casted her line out every day. She caught us dinner every day.
Nice.
So that was her activity. We went for a drive up the beach, which is all part of the experience, but she could take or leave that. Hers was just fishing. Whereas some of them love to go exploring and just driving up and down the beach. From there are inland tracks, so we can drive through, rainforest onto the beach. We find remote beaches that we can drive on. We'll find a secluded place under a tree. We'll stop. We'll have morning tea or afternoon tea or lunch on the beach. One particular participant, Mark,
our good friend at Strady.
Yes. Now, whilst we don't take them on water fishing, but we have partnered with, I guess partnered, it is a bit of a formal word, but we use their services. So they call themselves Strady Adventures. So they're part of the Quandamooka people, the original custodians of Minjerribah. And he has a business where he will take people out in a tinny, and they will fish the traditional way. So they will catch mud crabs, flathead with spears. So that's a two-hour experience, and for some of our participants have never dreamed of doing something like that. So to get out on the water and just experience that was a once in a lifetime thing for them.
Now, just going back a couple of questions, you guys also mentioned that you do customized respite. So what does that mean?
I guess, no, your turn.
I love hearing Frank talk. You've got more words out of Frank than I've had out of him in the last week. Wow. That's amazing. One case in point, one of our participants has mild cerebral palsy. In the onboarding interview process, she said, look, part of my plan is I do need to get away, for mental health reasons, and just need to get some space. And in the process of asking what her likes and dislikes were, I found out that she used to enjoy photography and was a part of some photography courses, but found them very difficult because the other people had higher levels of dexterity with their hands and were able to move a little bit quicker than she could. And therefore, she felt like there wasn't quite that accommodation for her disability and her ability to do what it is she does. And so she's been a part of these larger group things. I said, well, what about if while you're away with us at Minjerribah, what if we got you a camera? Because I'm a photographer. And I just said, what if I just loan you my camera for the week and we'll put a cage on it so it's a little bit easier to hold. And so we'll adapt it for you and just have at it. And we'll teach you what you need to know. And so she was blown away that we lent her a camera for the whole time that she was away with us. And basically one of her things every day was just to get out and take photos.
Yeah.
And so one of the customized things that we did was we made that available to her. And then this wasn't really in the plan, but what I did was I spent a half a day in Lightroom editing all of her photos for her and gave her this photo album of incredible pictures that she took that were a real testament to, and I said to her, you need to pursue this. Like, you need to really take this seriously because I think you've got a gift in this area. And you might hear more about that from us in the coming months because she's really gone on to, I think, really taking that quite seriously.
Nice.
And I think is very gifted.
Yeah.
And I think we need more people with disabilities exploring new skills. And that's a clear example of when they write into the short-term accommodation, including respite care categories there, it should be about learning new things.
Yeah.
And that's where we thought, okay, we can actually help you to be great at this. And so we actually did another, I think it was a 10-week course with her where I literally talked her through photography and editing and everything that I knew in that area as her support worker.
Yes.
And it's just brought her alive. You should hear her talk today.
Yes.
So that's one example. There's others like it. Another one of our participants, I don't know if I can call first name, so I won't, but another one of our participants was massively into art therapy. And so Frank and Jules, were able to, on some of those trips, or I think that was just you at that time, was able to take him to Brown Lake and just put him in front there in his canvas. We've got beautiful pictures. They're on our Instagram of him shot from behind, so it's a bit discreet, but of him with his canvas laid out on the ground at Brown Lake where you were, where we had morning tea.
Yes.
And just painting away there. And people were coming up and asking him about his pictures and what he was painting.
Unreal.
So those are a couple of examples of where we will just go out of our way to find ways to connect with them where they come alive and then they find a way to express that while they're with us.
Absolutely.
And they go away changed.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is
Definitely
amazing.
go away changed.
100%. Now, guys, last time we spoke, I think about 2 weeks ago, you mentioned that you were going through some challenges.
Ooh.
Oh, no.
Oh, don't we all love challenges in the NDIS? Really?
Do you want to share a little bit about, your journey around some of the issues?
Because I've got a lot to say on that, but I'm going to start with, I think you should start with, in layman's terms, in frank terms, what's the problem that we encountered?
Are we talking about the trying to get a commercial activity permit? Is that what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking about, Frank.
Yes.
Okay. So we specialise in outdoor experiences and we live in this amazing part of the world where we have access to the 4 largest sand islands in the world. So our specialty is taking participants over to some of these islands. We have a permit, commercial activity permit for Minjerribah, which is North Stradbroke and Moreton Island, but we would like to take participants to Fraser Island, which is a World Heritage listed. Now, you need a commercial activity permit because if you are doing anything for gain, you have to get a commercial activity permit issued from Queensland Parks and Wildlife so that they can charge you per person that you take into a national park. If you're a free and independent traveller, either one of you, Chris or John, if you wanted to go to Fraser or wanted to get on the beach, you could apply online and get a four-wheel drive beach permit, and you can go on the beach every day of the week, every day of the year if you want to. You can get a year's permit. But yes, if you're taking someone for gain, you need a commercial activity permit. We have applied for one for Fraser, Gari.
And so Gari and Kalula Recreation Area, which includes Rainbow Beach, Tiwa, Double Island Point.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but we've been denied. We've appealed, been denied, and appealed again. Now, incidentally, I was up at Rainbow Beach 6 weeks ago, maybe, as a free and independent traveller. This is just me on my own. So I decided
Sorry to jump in, Frank. Do we know why it was denied?
well, the main reason is they're managing the area from being overused.
Okay, so overused as in visitors,
As
and
in,
vehicles and
Too many
stuff.
people there, degrading the environment.
Right, okay.
And that it's not good for the island.
so they're not issuing commercial activity permits, and that's why we have been denied. However, I was up there 6 weeks ago, applied for a beach permit, got it online immediately. I can drive on the beach. I took some video footage, which I sent to Wayne, and I took a couple of videos. The first time there was one other car on the beach.
One car
One
in
car.
the entire area.
The second video, by the time I took the second video, they had gone. So there were no cars on the beach. So
Might have been two.
as a free and independent traveller, there was no problem with me being there. If I take that same car, it's the same vehicle, I put a person with a disability in it that wants to engage my services, I can't. I'm denied because they're managing the area from being overused. But if I kick that person out and put a family member in there or a friend, I can go every day of the year, which
Wow.
doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. They're claiming overuse. We're claiming discrimination.
Yeah.
Because
It
if
sounds
you
like
can,
it.
if you can have a permit for 365 days a year, take your family members every single day of that year with no caps. There's no caps on. They call them FITs in the tourism industry, free and independent travellers. So FITs have no caps, but commercial activity permits or commercial operators do.
Yep.
And we even extended a lifeline to Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service with the opportunity to say, okay, we understand if you're only, let's use round figures, let's say they're only giving 20 commercial activity permits, period, and we're number 21. We didn't make the cut. Fair enough. First of all, be transparent about it and tell us how many have it and why we didn't make it. But that being the case, you've heard of companion cards. And companion cards are where participants with disabilities can bring somebody with them to help them get access. So let's say they go into a football game and they just need help finding their seat. Companion card lets the support worker take them to their seat, get them seated, then they can go and wait outside. That's giving them access to community participation, all that. So we extended a lifeline to Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service and said, if you're not going to issue us a commercial activity permit, at least introduce a companion card system equivalent to what's on offer at other government facilities.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's escalated. We're going to be at the Queensland Civil Administrative Tribunal before the end of this year.
Okay.
They're now getting legal representation. Where it's Thing Adventures, again, we're a startup company, Thing Adventures versus the Queensland government. And it's massive. It's overwhelming. They've submitted over 1,000 pages of documentation, over 100 written submissions, and we're just trying to fight for someone's right to go to the beach.
Do you think they're worried?
Actually, yes, I do think they're worried because the short of it is they're throwing lawyers at it now. All we're asking for is the permit. We haven't committed a crime. We're not defending ourselves. We just want a permit to take a person with a disability to Fraser.
Yeah, we're just challenging a
all.
permitting process that's gone out of control.
So from what you guys are saying, a support worker is unable to take their client to that
100%.
island.
That would be correct.
Now,
That's
this is
actually correct.
That would be correct.
no. We've had that verified from Transport Main Roads and from QPWS. And the truth is, this is back to my thing about asking permission, not forgiveness. We're trying to ask for permission. So everyone else is just out there doing it and not reporting it. One of my favourite episodes of Clarkson's Farm is where Clarkson has this restriction about 17-mile radius or something around his farm. You cannot sell anything in your farmhouse if it's not from the local area. Local council shut down all of his T-shirts that were made in Vietnam. So what he did was he sold a 25-pound potato with a free T-shirt. Now, what's happening now is if we can't have this permit, we're going to have to do the same thing. And that is, you can buy this potato and we'll give you a free trip to Fraser.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Maybe we'll buy them lunch.
Okay,
Not a potato, but we'll give them lunch.
People are skirting the system, and that's not what good government does. And I don't want to make this political, but that's not what good governance does. I'll make that more, more fair. Good governance would say there should be a fair system in place for everybody, and people should be encouraged to do the right thing and to go and get the permits and the licenses. Can I just one other little soapbox issue though?
Sure.
For startup companies, anyone getting into the NDIS for the first time, it's daunting. I wish that there was either a national or a state office where there's one shopfront window that you could just go to, sit down and say, my name's so-and-so, I want to start this company. And the person on the other side of that window says, okay, here's Form A for this, Form B for this, Form C for this, Form D for that, fill all that out, bring it back to us in 2 weeks and I'll help you. Just one person.
Yeah.
The problem is you've got to go through about 10, 15 different departments. And for us, just go to our website and you'll see all the permits we've had to get, all the different government departments we've had to go through just to be able to even take one person on the beach.
Unreal.
And we're still fighting 18 months after the first application.
That's crazy.
To QPWS's credit, because we don't want to have an antagonistic role with them, they did give us permits for Minjarrabah, which is North Straddie, and Moreton Island.
Okay.
They're limited, but they're enough for what we need. But we just think everyone should have the right to go where they choose.
Absolutely.
So that's why we're pushing it.
Yeah. You guys are attending court end of the month or next month?
It's called a tribunal, and we've had our directions hearing.
Okay.
And so the last thing now is they've got to set a date. It's going to be a 1 day. They've allowed a full day for this. So I don't know what there is to talk about, really, but a full day, and we're told sometime before Christmas. It could blow out into next year.
Next year.
But we press on while we wait. Yeah, but thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it is a bit of a, we get fired up.
Yeah, absolutely, because, when we spoke last time, you guys briefly mentioned it because I believe at that time you were going through the process. So, I just wanted to get an update on that to see where things are going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll keep you posted.
Yes, we will.
It's challenges literally from everywhere. And it's not just the NDIS space. And I think that's where, providers, we try to innovate, do different things, but we get challenges from everywhere.
Yeah.
And for us also, we're also a tour operator. So we're a licensed inbound tour operator in Queensland.
Yep.
And this has obviously been brought to the attention of the tourism bodies as well, because all of our advertising overseas says, come and say g'day. And they show beautiful sand islands like Fraser and Minjarrabah and all of that. Yet when you go through the permitting process, it's not come and say g'day. It's like, rack off, we don't need any more of you. Yeah. Yet we're an Olympic city in 2032. We need to be doing a lot more. So we're pushing this on two lanes, NDIS as well as tourism. On the thing, something I'd like to see in the NDIS when it comes specifically to this issue around nature, outdoors, wilderness, whatever you call it, we've got to be so careful with our language. And I would like to see some things addressed there, because the NDIS are saying that we want to have evidence-based practices in the system, which I fully support. And as such, I just did, just before this podcast, it doesn't take much to go and find out that there are a ton of academic articles, journal articles, university, level material on the benefits of nature for people. And I just want to emphasize that our passion really does center around that feeling that we all get when we even get outside for a 1 hour walk.
Yeah.
You come back feeling refreshed and recharged. And there's a reason for that. And there's a lot of evidence to support that as a good idea for anybody, whether it's mental health, whether it's physical activities, somebody with muscular dystrophy and they've got to, you've got to stretch your muscles and get out and do exercise. Why do we have physiotherapy if it's not a good idea to go for a walk? So 2023, current psychology, effectiveness of nature-based walking interventions and improving mental health in adults. Nature-based therapy, another one. Therapy in individuals with mental health disorders. This is in the International Journal of Environmental Research, Public Health, etc. I've got dozens of articles that all push to evidence-based outcomes.
Yep.
And there's a lot of documentation on it. And so what I'd like to see is a clarification from the NDIS that says wilderness therapy is this, which is restrictive practice, behavioural therapy, all of that sort of stuff that is banned. But wilderness therapy is not taking people outside for a walk in the park, letting people put their feet on the sand, putting their feet in water, sitting by a river, because all the people with psychosocial mental health issues, trauma, incidences that literally need quiet and peace and calm, we're doing a disservice to them if we don't qualify what that is.
That's correct.
And that's what I'd like to see. So that's my closing thought for today.
We spoke about respite, and it sort of comes back down to the same issue as well. With respite, a lot more providers are now more hesitant to offer certain activities for the fear that it might not be classified as a support within the NDIS, right? And that they may not be able to claim for it. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that, with the sort of statistics that you have or the research that you have, is supports and environment are two separate things. They need each other to thrive, right? If you put the participant in the right environment with the right supports, it's a marriage. It works. But if you try and separate it, like what you've when we had the conversation early on, when you try to have supports, inside a four wall, a white wall, it's not going to work, right? Environment's equally as important, and I feel like sometimes that's not being acknowledged.
Agreed. As I said before, I've been on every respite since we've started. I have seen firsthand. Sorry, I get a little bit. Well, I wasn't expecting to get this emotional, but I've seen the impact. I've seen the difference.
Yes,
that it makes with the participants. They've some of them have not wanted to go home. We've had participants with severe PTSD, and in the onboarding process, where they've expressed extreme anxiety in just the lead up to it, because they have to leave their house and what's this going to look like. But when they get there, they're a completely different person, and we see their personality, their demeanour change. We had one participant who had a service animal, and she expressed not only how much she enjoyed it and changed and the benefit to her, but she noticed the difference in her service animal. She's never seen her service animal so relaxed, and the service animal responds to her. So if she's relaxed, the service animal is relaxed. So we've seen just a change in every one of them. That's made a massive positive difference.
Yes.
I want to just address one other thing about what you brought up with short-term accommodation, which also includes respite care. So that category, we've got to help people understand that there's a differentiation between the actual activities and the provision of respite. So, for example, elsewhere in the do not support list on the NDIS website, it says that you cannot use participant funding for accommodation expenses. You cannot use the participant funding for your food or meal expenses. However, short-term accommodation, including respite care, specifically says that it needs to include accommodation and meals, because you can't expect someone to go on a short-term accommodation outing with no meals or all of these things. And so the same thing goes to the activities as well. You can't expect them to sit in a house 24 hours a day. They've got to get outside.
Yes.
They've got to do something. And so just because one thing is specifically banned in one area does that not mean we should not be giving food or shelter to our participants when they're under our care for respite. So in my opinion, respite care includes, and this is NDIS's words, not mine, negotiated activities.
Yes.
Well, if that person's interested in Scrabble, we'll play Scrabble. If that person's interested in fishing, we'll go fishing.
Fishing.
That's a negotiated activity. Now, if the NDIS wants to micromanage that level of detail, we're in for bigger trouble than we realise. And so I think everyone needs to just calm down and say, okay, respite and STA is its own category. It's its own thing. And it has certain provisions there that are allowed that are certainly not allowed when it's just claimed separately as a part of another budget.
We just have to be very mindful that, whatever changes that the NDIS makes does not drive away new providers who are entering into the industry, who have different ideas, right? If they continue to make things difficult for providers like ourselves, we would lose out on Things Adventures, for example. And it would be such a shame.
I feel it. And again, we've spoken to so many. It's hard. It's hard for us. And we're fighting not just the ordinary level of regulation, but we're also just fighting the amount of misunderstandings and confusion and grey areas that could be better dealt with. And I do hope that there's some improvement in the next 12 months during this grace period for understanding the new legislation.
Frank?
Thank you, guys. It was great to have you here.
Yeah, Frank, it was good to hear you speak to me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wayne. Choked up.
Thank you, guys. And cheers to My Solace as well. We're a part of the My Solace family now. We absolutely love it. And I think when Chris and Cheryl told us the whole purpose behind it being my guiding light, and I love the way you I think that's what you said, that solace means light.
Light.
Yes.
Boy, do we need a guiding light right now in this industry. And when I first went onto the whole platform and saw what it is you're trying to do, we were big believers right from the get-go. So cheers to you guys for the great work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Keep it up. And I think in this industry, and you've had Desire on here before, everyone we meet, we're all just cheering each other on.
Absolutely.
It's not a competitive industry.
No.
It's let's champion one another. And so we're here to champion you guys as well.
Absolutely.
So thanks for your support.
When your challenges are taken care of, it'll be great to have you back here and, give us an update on how everything went.
Oh, we can't wait.
All right. No worries.
awesome.
All right, guys.
I would love to be in front of a microphone again.
Maybe we should have this whole setup, at the proceeding.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.